Welcome to InfoStream, your daily current. Unsure what to listen to? Turn to us for today's headlines. Stay informed. Devastating fire at Swiss ski resort kills 40. Investigation underway. Iran protests escalate with rising casualties. International concern grows. U.S. reduces tariffs on Italian pasta. Maduro opens to U.S. talks amid pressure. 2026 is a key year for Trump's legacy. BYD surpasses Tesla as EV leader. Rising costs threaten device prices in 2026. FEMA staff cuts raise administration concerns. Community sponsorship impacts UK migration trends. FTSE 100 rallies to a new milestone. NHS faces calls for major reform. Wales launches post-Brexit farming scheme. Water contamination crisis in Indore causes fatalities. Migrant shipwreck claims dozens of lives. Devastating Swiss ski resort fire claims 40 lives. Investigation underway. A catastrophic fire at a New Year's Eve party in Crans-Montana, Switzerland, has resulted in the deaths of approximately 40 people and injuries to over 115, primarily due to severe burns. The incident, which occurred at La Constellation Bar during celebrations on January 1, 2026, is being treated as a fire, not a terror attack, according to Regional Prosecutor Beatrice Pillaud. Initial investigations suggest the blaze originated from sparklers used with champagne bottles, though this remains unconfirmed. Authorities have confirmed the victims hail from multiple nationalities, with Italian officials reporting approximately 40 fatalities and 115 injuries. The intensive care unit at the nearest hospitals is overwhelmed, prompting the transfer of patients to facilities in Lausanne and Zurich, which possess specialized burn treatment units. Identification efforts are expected to take several weeks, further complicated by the severity of the burns, as stated by the Italian ambassador. Witness accounts describe a chaotic scene, with individuals fleeing the rapidly spreading flames. Several people recounted seeing a waitress placing candles on champagne bottles, leading to a swift escalation. Some individuals attempted to break through windows to escape, while others hid from the intense heat. The bar, accommodating approximately 300 people, was located in a popular alpine resort known for its stunning views. Emergency services, including 10 helicopters, 40 ambulances, and 150 responders, were deployed to the scene. A no-fly zone was established to facilitate rescue operations. Investigators are meticulously examining the circumstances surrounding the fire, with a focus on determining the precise cause and preventing similar incidents. The resort has been closed to the public as part of the investigation. A helpline has been set up for families of the victims. The investigation is ongoing, and authorities are prioritizing the identification of the deceased and the return of remains to their families. Iran protests intensify amid rising casualties and international concern. Mass protests continue across Iran, fueled by economic hardship, particularly a sharp decline in the value of the Iranian currency. The unrest, sparked initially by shopkeepers' grievances, has expanded to include university students and spread to numerous cities, with calls for the removal of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. 6 individuals have been confirmed killed in clashes between protesters and security forces over the past 5 days. BBC Persian journalists, unable to operate independently within Iran, rely on verified footage from social media platforms like X and Telegram to monitor the situation. They employ techniques such as reverse image searches and location verification using Google Maps to assess the authenticity of videos. Reuters reports that at least 8 people have died nationwide, including 2 killed in clashes in the city of Lordigan, as reported by the semi-official Fars news agency and human rights group Hengal. 3 more fatalities were recorded in Azna and Kudasht, both in western Iran, according to Fars. Hengal identified the deceased in Lordigan as Ahmad Jalal and Sajjad Valamanesh, confirming they were protesters. BBC Persian has been unable to independently verify these deaths. Furthermore, state media reported the death of a member of Iran's Revolutionary Guards, IRGC, in Kudasht on Wednesday, a claim disputed by protesters who assert the individual was one of their own shot by security forces. Numerous security personnel, including police officers and Basij members, have sustained injuries from stone throwing during the protests. In an attempt to quell the unrest, authorities declared a bank holiday in Tehran and other areas, ostensibly to conserve energy due to cold weather, but widely perceived as a measure to contain the demonstrations. Tight security has been implemented in Tehran, where the protests originated. President Masoud Pezeshkian has stated his willingness to address the legitimate demands of the protesters, while Prosecutor General Mohammad Mouvahidi Azad has warned of a decisive response to any attempts to destabilize the country. The unrest represents the largest demonstration since 2022, triggered by the death of Mahsa Amini. The situation remains volatile, with ongoing clashes and a significant risk of escalation. U.S. reduces proposed tariffs on Italian pasta imports. The United States Commerce Department is significantly revising its planned tariffs on Italian pasta imports, following concerns raised by Italian producers. Initially, a proposed tariff rate of 92% was slated to be applied to pasta produced by over a dozen Italian companies, bringing the total potential levy to 107%, considering the existing 15% tariff on goods from the European Union. However, after evaluating additional feedback received following a preliminary determination, the department now intends to impose tariffs ranging from 24% to 29%. This decision stems from an anti-dumping complaint filed in July by two American companies, 8th Avenue Food and Provisions and Winland Foods, who alleged that several Italian pasta manufacturers were selling their products at unfairly low prices, a practice known as dumping. The preliminary investigation, conducted in September, identified La Mollisana and pastificio Lucio Garofalo as key offenders, citing their uncooperative behavior and incomplete and unreliable data. These two companies accounted for the largest volume of pasta sales to the United States. The Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs welcomed the revised tariffs, stating they represent an acknowledgement by the U.S. authorities of the constructive cooperation shown by Italian companies. The Commerce Department's shift reflects a commitment to a fair, transparent process. The original tariffs were intended to address trade practices harming American manufacturers, but risked significantly increasing consumer prices. The revised plan acknowledges the Italian producers' willingness to address the initial concerns. The Commerce Department will continue to engage with stakeholders before issuing the final determination. This move follows other recent tariff adjustments, including a postponement of a planned increase on furniture imports and the allowance of certain food products, such as coffee, bananas, and beef, to escape tariffs. The changes demonstrate a more flexible approach to trade enforcement following initial investigations. Maduro opens to U.S. talks amidst escalating pressure. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro has announced his government's willingness to engage in direct negotiations with the United States, addressing the ongoing pressure campaign surrounding drug trafficking and related issues. Following weeks of heightened tensions, Maduro stated his openness to discussions with U.S. officials, specifying that the location and timing of the talks were flexible. This announcement comes amidst a sustained U.S. military operation targeting vessels suspected of involvement in narcotics smuggling within the Caribbean and Pacific. Over the past 3 months, U.S. forces have conducted more than 30 strikes against these vessels, resulting in the deaths of over 110 individuals. A particularly significant event occurred on Wednesday, when 2 boats allegedly transporting drugs were struck, claiming 5 lives. Furthermore, U.S. forces have carried out a drone strike on a dock area linked to alleged Venezuelan drug boats, causing a major explosion, confirmed by CNN and the New York Times through sources. Maduro's response to questions about the attack was evasive, stating he would consider discussing it within a few days. Beyond drug trafficking, Maduro indicated a willingness to discuss oil and migration, issues central to the U.S.'s accusations. The U.S. has doubled the reward for information leading to Maduro's capture and plans to designate the Maduro government as a foreign terrorist organization, AFTO. Despite Venezuela's relatively minor role as a drug transit country, primarily facilitating the movement of drugs produced elsewhere, the U.S. maintains a strong stance, alleging Maduro's government is emptying prisons and forcing inmates to migrate to the U.S. 8 million Venezuelans have fled the country's economic crisis, seeking refuge in nations like the U.S. The U.S. has also seized sanctioned oil tankers, accusing Venezuela of illicit trade. While the U.S. claims intelligence confirms the vessel's involvement in narco-trafficking, no concrete evidence has been publicly presented. Legal experts question the legality of the U.S. operations, citing potential violations of international conflict laws, given the lack of definitive proof. The U.S. Southern Command continues to assert that intelligence confirms the vessel's activity along known narco-trafficking routes. 2026, a defining year for Trump's second term and legacy. The year 2026 is projected to be a pivotal moment, shaping Donald Trump's political standing and the overall legacy of his second term. Democrats aim to curb his influence by securing at least one chamber of Congress in the upcoming 2024 midterm elections. The period will test the resilience of established institutions, including the courts, business, the media, and cultural organizations, against Trump's perceived strongman tendencies. Trump's return to power was marked by disruptive actions, including the dismantling of agencies like USAID, mass firings, the targeting of political enemies, and pardons for January 6th rioters. He engaged in provocative behavior, such as sending masked agents to seize undocumented migrants and transporting them to a foreign dictator's prison. He instigated a trade war with tariffs, snubbed allies, and sought to exert influence over nations like Canada and Greenland. Despite this disruption, Trump supporters view it as a successful challenge to the status quo. However, his approval rating has plummeted to 38%, and Republican lawmakers are preparing for potential losses in the midterms. The public's frustration stems from perceived broken campaign promises regarding prices and economic conditions. Key events anticipated in 2026 include the Supreme Court's ruling on his reciprocal tariffs, which could significantly impact his trade policy and executive power. The administration's ambitious birthright citizenship case also carries substantial constitutional implications. Throughout 2026, Trump's actions will be closely scrutinized, with the potential for significant repercussions. The midterm elections will be crucial, and any Democratic victory would likely trigger extensive investigations. Trump's presidency is characterized by a constant struggle against resistance, a reliance on executive authority, and a disregard for conventional norms. Challenges include managing the Affordable Care Act subsidies expiration, navigating relations with China and Russia, and potentially facing legal consequences. Despite his disruptive tactics, Trump's supporters value his willingness to challenge established institutions. Looking ahead, Trump's success will hinge on achieving foreign policy goals, such as brokering a lasting peace in Gaza or resolving the Ukraine conflict, as well as securing a favorable outcome in his negotiations with China. The year will ultimately determine whether Trump can solidify his legacy, or if his presidency will be defined by chaos and controversy. BYD overtakes Tesla as global EV leader. China's BYD has achieved a significant milestone, surpassing Tesla as the world's largest electric vehicle seller in 2025. Tesla's sales experienced a decline of nearly 9%, reaching 1.64 million vehicles globally, marking its second consecutive year of reduced deliveries. BYD, conversely, reported a substantial increase of almost 28% in battery-powered car sales, reaching over 2.25 million units. This shift reflects intense competition, particularly from Chinese manufacturers like Geely MG and BYD, who have leveraged lower pricing strategies to challenge established Western brands. Tesla's sales downturn was partly attributed to the removal of government subsidies impacting the cost of electric vehicles. Wall Street analysts have subsequently lowered their sales forecasts for Tesla in 2026, indicating a pessimistic outlook. Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla, is under pressure to substantially boost sales and stock value to fulfill terms of his lucrative compensation package, potentially reaching $100 trillion. As part of this agreement, Musk must also sell 1 million humanoid robots over the next decade. Despite Tesla's dominance in self-driving technology with its Optimus robots and robotaxis, concerns exist regarding the company's ambitious rollout plans. Analyst Dan Ives from Wedbush Securities remains optimistic, predicting Tesla will control approximately 70% of the self-driving market due to its scale. Beyond Tesla, Musk's diverse business portfolio, including SpaceX and The Boring Company, has drawn scrutiny regarding his focus. BYD's rapid expansion, particularly into Latin America, Southeast Asia, and parts of Europe, has been fueled by competitive pricing. The UK has emerged as BYD's largest market outside China, witnessing an 80% surge in sales for its Seal USUV plug-in hybrid model. Despite BYD's sales growth slowing to its weakest rate in 5 years due to fierce competition in China, Tesla maintains higher profitability. The dynamic EV market is characterized by intense rivalry and technological advancements, with BYD's ascent solidifying its position as a global EV powerhouse. Rising component costs threaten 2026 device prices. The escalating cost of random access memory, RAM, a critical component in smartphones, PCs, and medical devices, is poised to drive up the prices of electronic devices significantly by 2026. This surge is primarily fueled by the explosive growth in data centers supporting artificial intelligence (AI), which demands substantial amounts of high-bandwidth memory. The imbalance between supply and demand has led to price increases, with some RAM vendors reporting costs more than 500% higher compared to prices just a few months prior. Several factors contribute to this trend. Chris Miller, author of Chip War, identifies AI as the primary driver, noting the surge in demand for memory chips, particularly those required by high-end AI applications. Mike Howard from Tech Insights highlights the role of cloud service providers finalizing their memory requirements for 2026 and 2027, providing suppliers with a clear picture of future demand. This clarity, combined with existing supply constraints, has prompted suppliers to aggressively increase prices. Variations in pricing exist among RAM producers. Companies with larger inventories have experienced more subtle price increases, typically between 1.5x and 2x, while others lacking substantial stock have increased prices by up to 5x. The impact on consumer devices is substantial, with memory now accounting for 30 to 40% of total PC costs, up from the typical 15 to 20%. Margins in most consumer categories are insufficient to absorb these increases. Several manufacturers have proactively built up their inventory to mitigate price rises, but these are considered outliers. The situation is expected to persist well into 2026 with no immediate relief anticipated. The convergence of heightened demand from hyperscalers like Amazon and Google, alongside supply limitations, will continue to exert upward pressure on RAM prices, ultimately impacting the cost of a wide range of electronic devices. FEMA staff cuts spark concerns amid administration overhaul. The Trump administration is implementing significant cuts to FEMA's workforce, primarily targeting its core of on-call response and recovery (CORE) teams, raising concerns about the agency's capacity to respond to national disasters. Starting January 1st, DHS revoked FEMA's authority to renew CORE contracts without prior approval, leading to the immediate termination of approximately 50 employees whose contracts were set to expire. These CORE employees, representing roughly 40% of FEMA's 8,000-person workforce, are crucial for initial disaster response, working alongside local officials and managing vital aid. The administration's strategy, spearheaded by Secretary Kristi Noem and DHS, aims to significantly reduce FEMA's size, following a year-long argument that the agency is bloated, despite a GAO report identifying a staffing shortfall of over 6,000 employees. Thousands of FEMA staff departed in 2025 due to layoffs and buyouts, exacerbating the shortage. The CARE program utilizes term-limited positions, but DHS has limited renewals to 180 days, forcing contract expirations. A FEMA review council, appointed by the administration, is expected to recommend cutting the agency's workforce in half, potentially relocating staff out of Washington, D.C., to bolster regional coverage. However, this shift is accompanied by anxieties, with officials warning that most states lack the resources to independently manage major disasters. Billions in federal funding remain trapped within FEMA's bureaucratic processes, compounded by the administration's efforts to streamline operations. The abrupt cuts are part of a broader effort to shift disaster response responsibility to states. DHS has been urging FEMA to reduce its footprint while simultaneously acknowledging the existing staffing deficiencies. The administration's actions have prompted states to tighten their budgets and lay off local emergency management staff, anticipating a diminished federal role. The future of FEMA's funding and its ability to effectively support communities during crisis is now uncertain, with the task force's recommendations looming. The administration's plan has created a significant bureaucratic backlog and raised serious questions about the agency's preparedness for future disasters. Community sponsorship and migration trends in the UK. The UK government is implementing a new community sponsorship program alongside ongoing efforts to manage irregular migration. This program aims to provide a legal pathway for refugees to enter the country, building upon the success of the Homes for Ukraine scheme. The initiative involves local communities, charities, and faith groups supporting refugees through practical assistance, including housing, employment, and integration. A cap on annual arrivals linked to local capacity is planned, though initial numbers are expected to be relatively low, potentially around 500, aiming for a gradual increase. Migration data reveals a near pre-COVID level of net migration, alongside significant fluctuations in other key metrics. Immigration figures, encompassing visas and other legal entries, are tracked alongside small boat crossings, asylum applications, and irregular arrivals. Visa categories include work, family, study, and humanitarian routes, with the work category accounting for the largest number of new entrants. The government utilizes contingency accommodation, primarily in hotels, to house asylum seekers, adjusting placement based on local population density. A substantial backlog of asylum applications remains, with ongoing appeals and processing delays. Small boat crossings continue to be a major concern, driven by dangerous journeys from mainland Europe, with the International Organization for Migration (IOM) tracking fatalities and missing persons. Irregular arrivals encompass various methods, including air arrivals and port detections. Returns and deportations are monitored, with figures reflecting both enforced and voluntary departures. The government's approach to managing migration is characterized by a multifaceted strategy, encompassing legal pathways, contingency accommodation, and enforcement measures. Data collection and analysis are central to informing policy decisions, with organizations like the Home Office and the IOM providing critical insights into migration trends and challenges. The ongoing debate centers on balancing the need to protect vulnerable individuals with the imperative to control borders and manage the overall migration flow. FTSE Laos and Milestone amid New Year rally. The FTSE 100 index achieved a historic milestone on the first trading day of 2025, surpassing 10,000 points for the first time, marking a significant increase of over 21% compared to its level of 8,260 at the close of 2024. The index reached a record high of 10,046 points before experiencing a slight dip, ultimately settling at 981.2021 points shortly after midday. This performance outperformed major American indexes, highlighting London's market strength. Several key sectors drove the rally, notably British brands like Currys and Next, alongside robust gains in precious metal mining companies, particularly Rio Tinto benefiting from rising gold and silver prices. Increased global defense spending also fueled growth for contractors such as Babcock and Rolls-Royce, reflecting broader economic uncertainty and geopolitical tensions. The FTSE 100, comprising the 100 largest UK-listed companies, provides an indicator of market performance, though it's important to note that its success doesn't directly represent the overall health of the UK economy, given the significant international operations and revenue streams of its constituent firms. Approximately three-quarters of the FTSE 100's revenue originates abroad. Financial commentator Susanna Streeter described the 10,000-point mark as a psychologically important milestone, indicating a renewed investor interest in London's blue chip index, spurred by concerns regarding the high valuations of US tech companies. Dan Coatsworth, head of markets at AJ Bell, emphasized the significance of this achievement for Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who has been advocating for increased investment in the UK share market to stimulate economic growth. Coatsworth highlighted the FTSE 100's diverse range of industries, including mining and banking, as appealing to investors seeking stability during volatile times. He noted that the demand for essential goods and services, such as insurance, water, and even products like cigarettes and vapes, provides a resilient foundation for these companies, contributing to the index's sustained performance. The overall trend suggests a shift in investor sentiment towards the UK market, driven by perceived stability and diversified exposure. NHS under threat calls for radical reform. Recent concerns regarding the future of the National Health Service, NHS, have emerged from former hospital boss Nick Holm, who argues for immediate and substantial reforms to prevent its collapse. Holm, after 46 years in healthcare, emphasizes the need for honesty about the NHS's capacity and calls for a shift in priorities. He highlights a concerning trend of political rhetoric advocating for the NHS's demise, particularly from figures like Nigel Farage of Reform UK, who favors an insurance-based system. Holm stresses the importance of acknowledging the NHS's core mission, providing a safety net for vulnerable populations, citing examples like coastal communities in Essex. He criticizes recent investment in staff and buildings as insufficient, pointing to international comparisons revealing slower chemotherapy and radiotherapy delivery, alongside longer waits, impacting survival rates. He argues that focusing on preventative care, addressing diseases of poverty and deprivation like COPD and obesity-related cancers, is crucial. The NHS faces significant workforce challenges, with intense competition for specialist training posts. Holm advocates for redefining roles, allowing other professionals, such as nurse-led sexual health services, to handle simpler tasks, freeing doctors to concentrate on complex cases. He acknowledges concerns raised by the British Medical Association regarding patient safety and role clarity. Holm advocates for embracing technological advancements, particularly artificial intelligence, AI, to improve efficiency and productivity. He suggests utilizing AI-generated time savings for patient interaction, rather than solely focusing on increased output. He criticizes the NHS's reliance on outdated processes, comparing it unfavorably to sectors like banking. The government's response emphasizes continued public funding, free at the point of use, alongside modernization and record investment, which has already reduced waiting lists by over 200,000 and boosted productivity. However, the government acknowledges the need for fundamental change and a 10-year health plan designed to create an NHS fit for the future. The overall message is one of urgency, highlighting the potential for irreversible damage if significant changes are not implemented swiftly. Wales' post-Brexit farming scheme launches amidst mixed reactions. The newly launched Sustainable Farming Scheme, SFES in Wales, a replacement for decades of EU agricultural subsidies, has commenced operation following a protracted period of development and significant farmer protests. The scheme, designed to reshape Welsh agriculture post-Brexit, mandates that farms actively manage at least 10% of their land as habitat to qualify for entry-level payments. However, the scheme's implementation has been met with considerable division within the farming community. Initial farmer responses have been mixed. Dairy farmer Gethin Hughes of Ceredigion opted to join the scheme, citing the need for financial stability amidst fluctuating milk prices. Many other dairy farmers, particularly those lacking sufficient habitat land, have expressed concerns, anticipating the necessity of reducing herd sizes. The scheme's entry-level payment is intended to maintain existing habitats, but environmental groups argue this falls short of the ambitious biodiversity targets set for 2030. The Welsh Government, led by Deputy First Minister Hugh Davies, views the launch as a significant achievement and emphasizes the scheme's adaptability. Following widespread protests and a subsequent delay, the government established roundtable groups to address disagreements and co-design the scheme with farmers and environmentalists. While the government hasn't set a specific target for initial uptake, the number of participating farms will serve as a key indicator of success. Environmentalists, including Arfin Williams of RSPB Cymru, highlight the importance of the scheme's optional and collaborative layers, arguing that these are crucial for unlocking significant biodiversity benefits. They stress the need for rapid development of these upper layers to effectively support farmers in restoring nature. The scheme's success hinges on farmers having the necessary tools and support to achieve ambitious conservation goals. The government's focus is on a dynamic scheme that can be adjusted over time, acknowledging that complete consensus remains elusive, but aiming for a collaborative and effective approach. The scheme's initial uptake will be closely monitored as a measure of its impact and acceptance within the Welsh agricultural landscape. Widespread winter weather impacts UK across multiple regions. A significant period of severe winter weather is impacting large swaths of the United Kingdom, with multiple weather warnings in place and widespread disruptions expected through the weekend and into early next week. The primary concern is heavy snow and ice, particularly concentrated in Scotland, but also affecting parts of England and Wales. Amber snow warnings are currently in effect across northern Scotland, including Angus, Perth and Kinross, Grampian, Aberdeenshire, Moray, and parts of the Highlands, with forecasts predicting up to 40 cms as 15 inches of snowfall and potential blizzard conditions. These areas face heightened risks of power cuts and vehicle strandings. Across the UK, yellow snow and ice warnings are in place until Monday, with potential disruptions to rail, air, and road travel. Significant snowfall, up to 5 cms to 2 inches, is anticipated widely, and up to 3 inches and 8 cms in areas like the North Yorks Moors. The West Midlands are also experiencing yellow warnings due to icy conditions. National Highways has reported multiple crashes in Derbyshire, Leicestershire, and Nottinghamshire, urging motorists to seek alternative routes. The Scottish Gritter and Snowplow fleet is actively deployed across the nation's road network. Bus services have been diverted in the West Midlands, with National Express reporting disruptions in Birmingham, Solihull, Willenhall, West Bromwich, and Oldbury. Commuters are advised to pack essential supplies, including warm clothing, water, and blankets, in case of delays. Met Office forecaster Neil Armstrong predicts the cold spell could last well into next week, and wintry hazards will continue with more weather warnings likely. The prolonged cold Arctic air is driving temperatures well below average, exacerbating the risk of ice and snow showers. Authorities are urging residents to plan ahead, drive cautiously, and heed local advice to minimize disruption and ensure public safety. The ongoing weather situation necessitates vigilance and proactive measures across affected areas. Indore water contamination crisis claims lives and sparks public health concerns. A severe water contamination crisis in Indore, Madhya Pradesh, India, has resulted in multiple deaths and widespread illness, prompting a significant public health emergency. Initial reports indicate over 200 individuals have been hospitalized due to symptoms primarily linked to contaminated drinking water. The crisis centers around the Bhagirathapura neighborhood, where a pipeline leak caused sewage to mix with the municipal water supply. This contamination led to a widespread diarrhea outbreak, directly impacting residents' health. Several families, including the Sahu family, have reported tragic outcomes. Sunil Sahu tragically lost his 5-month-old son, Avian, who succumbed to diarrhea within 3 days after being given diluted tap water mixed with cow milk, a common practice in some Indian families due to concerns about the milk's thickness and potential digestive issues. Investigations are ongoing, with officials confirming 4 deaths directly attributable to contaminated drinking water. However, conflicting reports suggest a higher death toll, with estimates ranging from 8 to nearly 14 fatalities, based on accounts from local journalists. The Sahu family's experience highlights a critical issue: the widespread awareness of unsafe tap water and the subsequent practice of boiling the water before use, often as a precautionary measure. The pipeline leak is the identified cause of the contamination, presenting a significant challenge for the local authorities. Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister Mohan Yadav has pledged to investigate the incident thoroughly and implement measures to prevent future occurrences. The situation underscores the urgent need for improved water infrastructure and stricter quality control standards within the region. The ongoing hospital admissions further emphasize the scale of the health crisis and the continued strain on medical resources in Indore. Authorities are working to identify the source of the leak and implement immediate solutions to restore potable water supplies to the affected area. Tragic shipwreck claims lives of dozens of migrants off Gambia coast. A devastating shipwreck off the coast of the Gambia has resulted in at least 7 fatalities, and the disappearance of numerous migrants attempting to reach Europe via the Canary Islands. The incident occurred on Wednesday midnight near Jinak village in the North Bank region, where a boat carrying approximately 200 individuals capsized. The vessel was subsequently discovered grounded on a sandbank, prompting a swift response from the Gambian Navy and local fishing boats. As of now, 96 people have been successfully rescued, though 10 remain in critical condition and receiving urgent medical attention. The perilous journey across the Atlantic Ocean continues to be a frequently utilized, yet incredibly dangerous, route for African migrants seeking to reach Europe. In 2024, nearly 47,000 individuals have already arrived in the Canary Islands, tragically with an estimated 9,000 lives lost during similar attempts. The Gambian Navy initiated a comprehensive search and rescue operation, utilizing naval vessels and a fishing boat to locate remaining passengers. The boats involved are typically large wooden canoes, ill-suited for such extensive voyages, often overcrowded and lacking the necessary safety features. Authorities are currently working to verify the nationalities of the victims, many of whom are not Gambian nationals, a complex process given the circumstances. The ongoing crisis underscores the challenges faced by the European Union in combating irregular migration. Despite recent agreements with North African countries, many migrants are opting for the longer and more perilous Atlantic route, highlighting the desperation and risk-taking involved. The incident serves as a stark reminder of the human cost associated with migration and the need for continued efforts to address the root causes of displacement and provide safe and legal pathways for those seeking refuge or opportunity. The search operations continue, with hopes of finding additional survivors and bringing closure to the families of those lost.